is up, winning team? Today, I'm going to be helping you guys out, okay? You girls got your back because I'm going to summarize the entire Bible cover to cover. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, because I think it's very important to read the Bible, okay? As a winner, it's important to read the Bible. This is the winning manual. Now, albeit, I understand that it is so tough to read through the whole thing as I've done it myself. So I wanted to help you guys out by summarizing the whole story, because I think it's important. Like, you know, normally if you read something, you would read it from start to finish, right? If you don't listen to a song and listen to the middle part and the other part and the other part and whatever part, we always do things from start to finish. And I believe that it was very intentional, the order in which things were done. And I think when you do look at the overall story of the Bible, again, it's very easy to see how all of everything and all of history and everything clicks together. And that's going to be really important going forward. And I decided I'd add the little spin on where this winning concept comes from as well, like in the Bible, because for me, the Bible is the battle between winners and losers and winners and losers and winners and losers and winners and losers. And I'm going to describe it in that way today. Obviously, in a perfect world, read the Bible for yourself, love. But if it's a little bit hard for you at this stage of your life, or if you just want somebody who's already done it to give you a little bit of a summary, just an idea. I'm not the Lord. Go to the Lord. He said what he had to say. I'm just trying to make it easier so that if, like, I know that at first it took a while before I felt ready to like read the whole Bible cover to cover. So that's why I'm doing that for you guys. Also, so that you have a sense of foundation for what we're doing going forward, because I'm going to start to be talking a lot more about history and stuff in like upcoming videos. So anyway, we've hopped on and on enough. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, welcome and join the team, because if life's a game, let's play to win. That's what we do. We win over here. Okay, so Le Biblio. It starts in Genesis, ends in Revelation. We have an Old Testament, we have a New Testament. And as I recently discovered, although it's not that I didn't know, I just never thought about it, that between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there is a 400-year period. I'm going to explain that 400-year period in a separate video, because that is history. That's not the actual physical Bible, but it all clicks together. It's all the same thing, because the Bible is also a historical text. It just happens that this is a historical text that is also the living, breathing word of the Lord. So we start in Genesis, right? So in the Bible, we start in Genesis. If you want, now is a great time to grab your Bible, actually. So why doesn't everybody take a moment, pause the video? If you have a Bible, grab one. If you don't, download the Bible app. So many places give free Bibles away, guys. So if you don't need to buy a Bible, there are so many places. I'm sure if you Google free Bible, you'll find somewhere that will send you a free Bible. Make sure it's Old and New Testament. We start in Genesis, right? Now, I'm going to be telling you guys, like I said, this whole storyline from the perspective of winning and the perspective of the overarching stories of the people. Now, there's a lot of other things there's a lot of other bits and bobs that you have to go and read for yourself, such as all of the various commandments of the Lord and this, that, and the other. But we'll get into a lot of that in the future, but this is going to be a lot to summarize, so obviously I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I'm just going to give you the overall story arcs, if you will, of the Bible. So we start in Genesis. Genesis 1, God creates everything. The world was without form and void. Tohu wabohu in Hebrew. And he spent 6 days creating the earth, everything in it, but yada, yada, yada. He created basically the heavens, the seas, the everything. Lo and behold, yada, yada, yada. We then find ourselves in the end of chapter 2 of Genesis, and then the Lord creates man. Well, in chapter 1, he creates man, which is actually quite interesting, because when he creates man initially, it's like he creates man in spirit almost, and then like he creates man in physicality, and then he kind of puts the two things together in chapter 2. Obviously, chapter 3 of Genesis, we all know what goes down. Adam and Eve, there's a separation between, first of all, division between man and God. Second of all, man and woman, right? All thanks to the work of the most cunning creature of all, according to the Lord, the snake, and partaking in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden. They get cursed into the way that they're going to live, which looks a lot of the way that we live today. Adam is going to be able to grow food from the sweat of the brow. He's going to have to work really hard to be able to provide. Eve is going to give birth. Women are going to give birth with a lot of pain and and etc., etc., right? And then he says to the snake, the woman is going to give birth to somebody who will eventually crush you. You will bruise his heel, but he will crush your head, right? As if to say, you will cause some damage to this body, right? But the body ultimately will destroy you. So then and there is God prophesying that, listen, don't worry about what happened. My side wins. They're going to win because there's going to be a son that is going to be born. Then is a tale in chapter after chapter of lots of different events. We have Cain and Abel. Jealousy enters into the picture. They break, Cain kills Abel because he doesn't bring an offering to the Lord that the Lord sees as fit, as good enough. And then he kills his brother Abel because Abel's gift was good enough, even though the Lord had said to Cain, bruh, literally, dust yourself off and try again, and you're good. You're good. I will honor your offering. If you do not do well, sin is knocking at your door, and its will is not in your favor, and you will regret following what you're thinking about doing right now. Follows what he feels like doing right now, just like his mother, just like whatever. And now he ends up killing his brother, and he ends up in a state where he's like, I don't even know how I'm going to live now because I have been so severely cursed for killing my own brother. Fast forward, then the Bible gives us a whole bunch of breakdown of they have another child called Seth, Adam and Eve. And then we have a whole listing breakdown of all the lineages, bringing us up to Enosh. Then we have Enoch, which we're going to do Enoch in a separate thing. I'm going to do the book of Enoch as well. We're going to talk about the book of Enoch. That is, again, a historical text. Enoch is mentioned in the Bible. Interestingly, Enoch is one of two of the people in the Bible that doesn't actually die. So Enoch and Elijah, I believe, both just go to be with the Lord. They don't actually die like in the normal death human experience. So we have Enoch, which leads us to Lamech, which leads us to Noah. In the times of Noah, we all know what happens. I'm going to do another whole subset about videos about Noah, because I believe the times we're in now is very, 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 very much like the times of Noah. So we've had all the destruction between the families, whatever. Now, to make matters even worse, the angels and the watcher angels were supposed to be watching and the people and helping to manage, the Lord's kingdom, see the women that God created and think, whoa, they are beautiful. We want to get involved with them. The women decide to get involved with them also. And then they form these things called the Nephilim. Now, we won't get into the Nephilim, the giants, the whatever. I'm going to do that as a whole separate thing because I have a lot to say about the Nephilim. And so stay tuned for that. This is just the backbone. Then we have the flood. In the flood of Noah, God says, listen, I need you to take all of the different animals, all of the different everything, you and your family, get into that ark because I'm wiping everything out because y'all acting crazy out here. It's gotten crazy, this absolute chaos, absolute pandemonium. And I think it was for the better. This is just me giving my personal opinion because I don't know what we would have done, but it just goes to show again the nature of humanity, because I really feel like the purpose of what God is trying to show in so much of this is the character of all of the people involved in their natural nature. So humanity, us humans, are innately selfish, innately destructive and chaotic. And God is significantly loving and unconditionally loving, right? Because every single time we keep failing him, we keep breaking ourselves away from him, he's showing how, again, he goes back to his people. He still tries to work with his people. He still tries to talk to his people. He still tries to love on his people, right? So that's where that is. So then obviously we have Noah's Ark. They survive. All is said and done. Can't imagine what that must have been like to be in an ark watching this insane flood and you just know you're the only people alive on the planet right now. Insane. Next, we find ourselves now, all of the descendants we have from Noah. And then we find ourselves, there's also the Tower of Babel moment where, people built the tower to try and, again, try to get to heaven, try to get to to the things that God can give us without going God's route, similar to Adam and Eve and the fruit. You shall have the knowledge of good and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why would you need the tree of the knowledge of good and evil when you can have the tree of life? Because we, again, as humans, we always want to be our own gods. So this is what I'm saying. It's this whole thing of being our own gods. What happens when we turn into being our own gods, how that backfires on us. And we'll see that that is where the losing mentality actually comes from, right? So God confuses all the languages because he's like, y'all acting crazy out here. Then we continue on through down all the lineages. You can read them, and this is what I love. A lot of people complain about the Bible having like all the long like kind of like cloggy explanations of what you call them. Who so and so who fathered so and so, and the daughters are this and this. But I believe that God did that because he knows us. He knows that we're the people who are going to critique everything and be like, but how do we know this? And how do we know that? And how do we know this? And how do we know that? And how do you know this? Go and look this stuff up in history. He's giving you a whole family tree. You can go all the way back and see where all these people were. That's the point, right? That's why when he's mentioning Enoch, he's like, Enoch has a book. You can go read the book of Enoch. The book of Enoch tells you all about what happened with the Watcher Angels, because God actually, according to the book of Enoch, which is a historical text, not canonical Bible, right? Enoch was there helping to judge the angels that were doing whatever they did. And there's some really interesting things that happened there, but we won't talk about that today. Next, we find ourselves in Abraham. Abraham, of course, is promised to be the father of many nations, despite him and Sarah being a lot older in age. And then we all know what goes on. Sarah has a distrust of the Lord, as is the nature of humanity. She then decides, please, can you sleep with my my servant? And then Abraham does as such, or Abraham does as such, has Ishmael. I'd just like to also point out, Ishmael is where modern day, the descendants of who now became modern day Islam comes from Ishmael. That's my personal understanding from looking at the history. So then we have Ishmael, right? But the son of promise was to be Isaac. And I mentioned that because in the Quran, you'll notice that the Quran always includes Ishmael when it talks about the God, father of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You know, like that's what we do. We do when we're talking about which God our God is, because it's the God of our fathers. It's supposed to be an ancestral thing that we all continue in generation after generation, worshipping the same God of our ancestors, right? Not worship our ancestors. That is demonic. But the God, that's why our God, my God, the God of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You guys get where I'm going. But in the Quran, as you guys will know from when we read the Quran, they also include Ishmael in that list, which God isn't God's child of promise. So that's again where there is a very distinctive difference between the Bible and the Quran as well. But we're also seeing again another form of division, because Abraham did have that child. That child was not the child of promise. That child was not the intended child to have been had. Now, obviously, the Lord, again, he's not unloving or in any way towards whatever. He didn't like say, go and kill Ishmael or something. He still, you know, is required to receive love and whatever, and acknowledges him, just like how God acknowledges our Ishmaels, as they say. When we do things that are wrong, God will still help us out and still keep us on track and still help us to figure out what we're going to do about the Ishmaels that we created, in essence. So he tells Abraham he's going to be the father of many nations, has Isaac, tells him to go and sacrifice Isaac. Again, this is a test, I believe, to show the character of Abraham, because Abraham knew, he said, I know that the Lord is going to provide. I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about anything going down. You go ahead and we're going to take Isaac and I'm going to go. And of course, there was a ram in the bush. He knew that the Lord, he had faith in the Lord. This is where faith comes into it. He's like, I don't know what the Lord is going to do. I don't know how he's going to do it, but I know he's going to provide. He goes to where he needs to go to just before he goes to kill Isaac. He's stopped. And of course, there's a ram stuck in the bush. Beautiful story. Love to see it. And we go on and on and on. Isaac then, I believe, marries, is it Rachel? Rebecca. Yeah. Yeah, and then we have Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau, brothers again. So we've got twin brothers again. And now Esau is actually the older brother to Jacob. Esau was the one who was out in the fields with his father, you know, farming, hunting, etc. Jacob was quieter, indoors with his mum, was a bit more of maybe what we today would call slightly more introverted. Now, as Esau being the oldest, it is his birthright to actually, you know, it's his birthright to have inherit, to be the heir of his father, right? But what basically happens, long story short, is that Jacob and his mum find a way to take the birthright of Esau to give it to Jacob, right? Now, I don't know why Rebecca did this, to be honest, but that's what happened, okay? So how do they do this? Well, Esau comes in from being out and about with his father in the field. He's hungry. He's desperately hungry. He's in his flesh, right? And then his brother says to him, Jacob is like, I'll give you food if you sell me your birthright. Now, again, very revealing about the nature of humanity and the nature of humans, that we are slaves to our flesh, that in a moment, Esau would give up his entire birthright. Because let's not forget, Jacob becomes Israel, the father of all of Israel, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Judah is one of his sons. Lion of the tribe of Judah, that's Jesus. All of the descendants of everything of the people of God come from Jacob. So this whole birthright thing is actually insane when you think about it. And funnily enough, King Herod, the one who wants to kill Jesus, fast forward, that we're going to find out about later on, he is actually a descendant of Esau, if you can imagine. So that's just insane. So, yep, Jacob gives the food, Esau gives his birthright. Jacob and his mum forged the plan to convince Isaac, who was blind as he was dying, to pray the prayer of blessing and, you know, passing on the mantle, if you will, to Jacob. Jacob then receives the blessing of his father to continue the lineage, even though technically it should have gone to Esau. You see what I'm saying again about all of these just areas of destruction and dysfunction and just all this stuff. And then Jacob wrestles with the Lord and says to because he gets into a fight with the angel of the Lord, which I believe angel of the Lord is Jesus, because every other time angels are mentioned, the angels always are saying, do not worship me, do not bow to me, do not whatever, I am just a brother with you. Our angels are like brothers to us. We're all like, they're not better than us. The only person we pray to is God, not to the angels. We don't talk to the angels. It's not for us to talk to angels. So then so then Jacob ends up wrestling with the angel of the Lord, and he holds on to this angel of the Lord, and that's why I believe the angel of the Lord was the manifestation of Jesus in the Old Testament. And then he says, I will not let go until you bless me. This angel also breaks in, I think it's like Jacob's hip, I can't remember exactly. And because of Jacob and what he did with the Lord blesses him. And he's renamed Israel, because Israel means to wrestle with God. Now, I believe this is like such a deep meaning, because I believe just like how we are supposed to be doing, just like how we're doing now, we are to not wrestle with God as in like fight against him, but to fight with him and for our relationship together, fight to understand him. That's what I feel like is the understanding. That's where I think we go wrong today, is like we look at the Bible and we're trying to like be against God, rather than be like, God, I want to believe this is true about you, but how come it's this? How come this? How come that? So that's like what it's like with me and God. It's like we're both fighting for our love basically together. I feel like we fight for the love. We're fighting for the love together. It's a very beautiful thing, to be completely honest with you. Now, Jacob, all in all, ends up getting married. Now, well, he wants to marry Esau marries an Ishmaelite. So that says a lot, doesn't it? He marries an Ishmaelite. Esau marries an Ishmaelite. So he's married into the descendants of the Lord. Very interesting, because of course, this is what's going to happen now because of what the decisions that had been made. And again, actions have consequences. Nevertheless, Jacob wants to marry this beautiful woman he sees called Rachel. And he goes to their father, who I believe is Laban. Is his name Laban? Where is it? Is it Laban? Yeah, Laban. And he's like, well, you got to work for me for 8 years if you want my daughter. And he's like, I bet that ain't nothing if it means I got to have Rachel. Then he does that. And then Laban's like, so take Leah. And then he's like, but I work for Rachel. And he's like, yeah, but Leah's older, so you got to take her because it's customary. I can't be giving away my younger daughter when my older daughter's not even married. And then he's like, so how am I going to get Rachel? Sorry, one second. So yes. So, by the way, I'm very aware that it's taken us a while to get through Genesis, but it's worth it because the other books, a lot of them we can skip through. And if I have to do a couple of videos, anyway, whatever. There's a reason. There's a foundation. We're setting a foundation. It's not going to take us as long. I'm going to summarize a lot more of the other books, but these ones are important because it's the foundation. So understanding this part is really, really important. Anyway, so Yes. So then he works another like 8 years, I believe that it is, so that he can get Rachel, the one he really wants. Then there's pandemonium because he's married 2 women, and there's all these issues to do with who's barren, who isn't barren, who is he with, who is he not with. Sometimes he's favoring Rachel, and then the Lord is like, dude, you also married Leah. She's also your wife. You can't ignore her marital rights. Yada, 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 yada. The girls are at odds with each other. They're giving him their servants to have kids with. All in all, amongst these 4 women, he has, I believe, a total of, is it 13 children? I think is it 13, like 13 sons and 1 daughter? I can't remember. It's like 13 sons and 1 daughter, or 12 sons and 1 daughter. And of course, the sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel, which are to be and again, just noticing that God and his governmental strategies, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples. You see what I'm saying? There's certain numbers that do hold fast anyways. And so Joseph, the youngest, I believe he's the youngest or the second to youngest of the sons, second to youngest, because I think Benjamin comes after him. Anyway, becomes favored. We all heard the story of the Jacob's colored coat and all of this malarkey, whatever. I don't even know if that specific. Anyway, whatever. And Joseph ends up having this dream. Now, again, I just want to point something out. His siblings wanted to kill him, right? His siblings wanted to kill him because, like, who do you think saying that you had this dream that we're all going to bow down to you, right? What they didn't realize is that each of them all had their own destinies, because that's how the Lord works. And again, this is where we start to talk about the winning mindset. You trying to take somebody else down isn't the way to do it. There is room at the top for everybody. What they didn't know is that each of them had their own individual destinies and winnings that were going to come from them. Because yes, Joseph might have saved them from then, but guess what? He didn't become one of the 12 tribes. He didn't become one of the 12 tribes of Israel. He didn't become the tribe of Judah in which Jesus came from, etc., etc. And all the various different tribes had different things, which their father Jacob, who became Israel, blessed them all for their different things. They all had different gifts. Like, is when I say gifts, I mean like talents and skills that were, again, done on purpose by the Lord to create a strong team, so that when in the future thinking, God is like, when you guys get to the promised land, when after all goes down that you don't even know is about to go down, if you all work together, some of you are going to be great farmers, some of you are going to be great some of you will be great with the wheat, some of you will be great with the grain, some of you will be great with, other different things. That was the whole idea of the Lord, was that you guys as a community would have everything covered. And he was very clear in the Bible, in the coming books, about after they actually finally get out of Egypt. So obviously next we have the Egypt story. Joseph ends up going to Egypt after everything that had happened, interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, because Pharaoh doesn't know that there's this famine coming, and then Joseph ends up preparing the whole of everywhere basically for this famine coming up, and he prepares so well that they actually have excess. That's what gives him favor in the sight of Pharaoh. He's also able to look after his family, the ones that tried to kill him, yada yada yada. And then we find ourselves in the predicament where Joseph ultimately passes away, that all dies, that we come to a new Pharaoh. The new Pharaoh sees that, wow, the people of God are thriving. They are what? Winning. And he says, I cannot have this. I'm going to enslave these people. So this is the thing again. So I'm going to enslave these people. So the people of God became enslaved. The Israelites became enslaved because the new Pharaoh was threatened. The old Pharaoh favored Joseph for saving literally everything. The new Pharaoh is threatened because, like, who is this strong, abundant group of people? Lo and behold, we find ourselves with Moses. Now Moses, and this is something again that people don't talk about enough, Moses is the one who turns around and is like, well, actually, he had been sent off and saved because, again, this Pharaoh was really concerned. Similar to how Herod becomes concerned about the people of God in the New Testament, here we have the Pharaoh is concerned and starts to kill off the babies because it's like, I can't have somebody threatening my throne. These peoples is too powerful. Just so happened that Moses' mother leaves him in a basket in the water, is picked up by an Egyptian, and he has a whole different life to his people. When he goes back to his people, finds out what's going down, he's out here killing the enemies. The people, though, are scared. They're like, why would you do this to our oppressors? Reminds me a lot of people today, can't lie to you, very much relate to this with Moses, where you try to step in to help your people, and they're like, why would you try to come against our oppressors? We're oppressed and we want to stay here because we're scared of them now. And then after that, Moses develops an anxiety that he never recovers from, right? He develops an anxiety that he never recovers from, which is where Aaron steps into the picture. I believe Aaron is his brother. Also, just to mention that Moses and Aaron were of the tribe of Levi. So the child of Jacob, Levi, is where Moses comes from, right? So the reason I mentioned that is because the Levite tribe was God's chosen tribe to be the priests. Like I said, different tribes had different jobs. Different tribes had different things that they specialized in. The tribe of Levi was to become the priests of the Lord in the temple, right? And so it was an abomination for other people who were not the tribe, for coming from the tribes of Levi, to be a priest, because that was the order that God created, and that's why Moses in this instant also, and Aaron, etc., etc. So they go to Pharaoh. We all know the story, the 10 plagues. Pharaoh doesn't want to give the people up. God is like, listen, I don't want to don't test my gangster. Pharaoh tests his gangster. God gives him 9 warnings, and then God says, you're done. Kills all the firstborn sons of Egypt, frees the people, guides them into the wilderness. And I believe that God killed all the firstborn sons. Why? Because he's like, you're not having another heir on this throne. You're done. You're not about to mutate. You're not about to. And this is again something that we learned from the Lord, or that I learned from the Lord, that it's really super duper important that, like, when you have an enemy, you don't just like cut off the enemy and leave some stragglers. There's so many times where God is like, you take out all of them, and when they don't, it backfires. And we'll see that in the future books of the Bible, right? So we're now in Exodus, and they've left, they're out of there, where are we here? The priest, the law of the guilt of suffering. So now we get into a lot of the laws, right? So as we are, hold on, are we? So the Lord is leading the people. He leads them out. You know, we know the story. They cross the Red Sea. Pharaoh comes after them because basically the Lord is like, bruh, they're going to come back. Because Pharaoh is just like, as he is a prideful king, is like, I can't just let these people walk away. Probably what happens if they come back and they get me? And then the Lord is like, well. And then off they go. And they go to try and destroy the people again. So now we've got Moses. They're all traveling, through the wilderness, and God is giving a lot of instructions. This is actually where we're in Leviticus, Numbers. This is actually, so here we're in Leviticus 23. This is where the Lord gives his own actual feasts, the things he wants his people to do. And he specifically says, do this in remembrance. So you're doing this to help remember what God your father did for you in Egypt, right? So there's these 7 different feasts that we're supposed to do throughout the year. He starts off with talking about the Sabbath, right? So the Sabbath, which is today, you guys know that I honor the Sabbath, as in that's my time of rest with the Lord and whatever. Because again, you're taking time out for the Lord. The Lord worked for 6 days and he rested. That's what he says he wants us to do as well. So we have on sunset on Friday till sunset on Saturday. That's the Sabbath, right? That's the technical Sabbath of the Lord. And then there's the other feasts. We've got the Passover, which is what they experienced when the angel of death came while they were in Egypt. The Feast of the First Fruits, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Trumpets. All of these different feasts are also prophecies of Jesus Christ and what's to come with Jesus, etc., etc. And he explains all of this to them, exactly what they're supposed to do, the Sabbath year, the year of the Jubilee, all of these different things, how they're supposed to live. And this is all about the way that they're supposed to live. We find ourselves in Numbers. And there's a lot of talk about just like the numbers of people of God, what they were doing, laws for purification, duties of priests and elders. So this is God very much giving an idea to us about what it is he expects for his people to do, how these people are supposed to live. Even here he says, while Israel lived in where is it? Where are we? Are we out already? Have I missed a bit? I feel like I've missed a bit. Exodus. Leviticus, the Lord accepts for Aaron's offering, the Day of Atonement, Feast of the Lord. Bear with me, all. Yes, all is well. So, yeah, we find ourselves now where they get themselves to the promised land. Eventually, they're in the wilderness. They didn't really get it. There was a lot of issues that went down in the wilderness. They weren't happy that they were only being fed manna. They build themselves a golden calf. God gives Moses the 10 Commandments in Exodus, and just a lot goes down in this time. Eventually, we find ourselves in going into the promised land. And now it's time to go and see what's going on inside the promised land. Now, the people do not believe that it's possible to make it through. So, hold on a second. Yes, so basically they're intimidated because they send in spies to go and see this supposed promised land that the Lord has promised. What they didn't expect is that when they got there was going to be also... it was going to be very powerful, very large. And they also found sons of Anak, which were also Nephilim. Yes, there were giants in the promised land. So again, just another little hint to why I say certain things about where we're at today. Because even in the Bible, there are hints that, yes, the Lord wiped out all of humanity and all of everything. But why are we still hearing about Nephilim long after the floods of Noah? Interesting, isn't it? We'll talk about that another day. So long story short, and I'm going to just summarize to the end of Deuteronomy, and then I'm going to stop this video, and then I'll summarize the rest of the Old Testament and everything else in a separate video, because I feel like this video had to be really set the tone for where we how we started out as humans. Basically, long story short, the people of God keep giving themselves away to false gods, to finding themselves in all of these different predicaments because they're not happy with the situation they're living in because of the situation that God has them living in, because he's trying to prepare them. I believe that God's intention was, I'm trying to prepare you so that when you get to the promised land and you have the riches and the abundances and everything, that your life isn't defined. That's not what makes you happy. That's not what makes you content. That you find that they were to find everything with him, and all of their assurance, all of their contentment with God, so that the riches and things of this world cannot be used against them, which is exactly what is going to happen for the rest of the Bible and all of humanity until us here today. They didn't get it. So that whole generation that was with Moses, including Moses, never makes it to the promised land. And that's how we finish in the first 5 books of the Bible. So we'll leave it there for this, and I'll do the other rest of the bits separately. The reason why I think this is really important to talk about as well, by the way, guys, is because the reason why I think this is really important to talk about is because this first 5 books of the Bible as well is where a lot of the Abrahamic religions are still in agreement. So up until this point, the first 5 books of the Bible, also known as the Torah, what's the other name? Is it called not the Pentateuch? Is it the Pentateuch? Anyway, I'm not sure. The Torah, as a lot of people refer to it as, is a part that is used in Islam, is a part that is used in even Judaism. And the 3 Abrahamic religions, which are obviously Islam, Judaism, and, oh my gosh, it just dawned on me now, Judaism because of Judah. Duh. I don't know why that has just hit me now. Anyway, and Christianity are all forged in those 5 Bibles. I think it's important. I think it's very interesting that for all of those 3 religions, the agreed upon part is the bit before people even make it to the promised land. I think that's very telling. I'll let you guys stew on that. I'm going to leave it there for this one because I think it's going to be better to separate them. Some of the other bits I will rattle through the rest of the Old Testament a lot more quickly. But I do think, as I was going through Genesis, I was thinking this is actually worth breaking down. So this is where we're at. We're at the point where the people of God have already started giving off to other gods, having calves. They've shown their adulterous nature. Once again, like I said, God consistently trying to help them, consistently giving them another chance, consistently saying, he's like, why are you worried about the giants in the promised land when I just delivered you from Pharaoh? You haven't understood. And it's very telling about our human nature and the truth of how we feel towards God. Because clearly they didn't trust God. They didn't believe God was God. Because if you believe God is the God that you supposedly believe in, why are you worried about what's in the promised land? Hello, he's the Most High God. He'll do whatever. It doesn't matter who's in there. It doesn't matter what the giant is. It doesn't matter if the giant's 100 foot tall. You're saying you worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? The one who created this universe. You think that that's any light work for him to just get rid of them people over there? Anyways, I'm going to do this in a part 2. We're going to go to part 2 where I'm going to try to summarize the rest of the Old Testament. But here's where we're at. We're adulterous. That whole generation, God's like, you guys have been so ugly. Your attitude has been so ugly. You guys are not making it. And so next we're going to find ourselves with Joshua, who kind of takes over from Moses in order to get the people through. The walls of Jericho and all of this are to come. Everything's coming. Judges, Kings, you name it. Some of my favorite parts of the Bible are coming up next. So stay tuned for part 2. I don't know if I'll post them all on the same day or if I'll do them day after day, but I will record all of them today. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Let me know if this is helpful. Let me know what you think, because if life's a game, let's play to win. Let's have winning strategies. Let's lock in, everybody. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.